Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into the current state of American trucking.
Yeah, and if you're a driver listening, you probably feel it. The pressure is just immense right now,
It really is. Our sources are showing operating costs jumping maybe 25% year over year,
which is huge. But then you look at spot rates.
still sitting near 2019 levels. It's a tough equation, a real game of diminishing returns, it feels like.
It absolutely is. And, the systemic pressure, the pain, the low rates, it kind of highlights how the industry often seems designed, maybe unintentionally sometimes, but designed to maximize shipping efficiency.
Often at the expense of the labor, the drivers themselves.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to look at the sources that analyze this, that cut through that noise, and maybe pull out some concrete solutions.
Yeah, we're looking for that path towards, financial freedom, getting some respect back, finding some control.
Because the core idea we kept seeing is this. Drivers kind of need to pivot, move from just being labor, to being more like professional business people.
Using modern tools, diversifying how they make money.
Right. And here's where it gets, I think, really interesting. Some sources suggest the ultimate solution for a lot of drivers isn't just about surviving the rate wars.
It's about building extra income streams, using
Yeah.
things like AI.
Exactly. Building income streams, maybe using AI tools so they can actually retire, as one source put it, on their terms.
I like that. It's about being proactive, yeah. Not just sitting back and hoping the market saves you.
Definitely. So where should we start? Maybe where the system first seems to let drivers down, the CDL schools.
Okay, yeah. The commercial driver licensing schools. The critique here is, well, it's pretty polarized. We saw one source flat out call many schools the biggest scam nobody talks about.
That's a heavy claim, a really serious claim.
It is, but we have to look at the evidence they're citing, right?
Right. And the argument is that the core function for a lot of these places, these sort of CDL mills, is just clearing that test hurdle.
Not actually preparing someone for the job, for being a professional commerce manager, as you put it.
Precisely. We saw data suggesting some programs offer only like 10 hours of shared driving time.
Share time with how many students?
Sometimes 20 or 30 students rotating through just one truck.
Wow. That does suggest preparation might be an afterthought there.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is what's missing from the curriculum.
Yeah, the sources say they totally fail to prepare drivers for the actual business of trucking.
Right. They teach you how to pass the maneuver test, the backing, the cones.
But they skip the crucial stuff, the knowledge you actually need day to day.
Exactly. Like essential things. We saw data showing modules on, say, high FD fuel tax filing or just basic ledger accounting, maybe even how to effectively negotiate with dispatch.
Those are optional, if they're even available.
Often, yeah. Optional or just not there. They teach cones, not commerce, basically.
And if you kind of follow the money, the conclusion from some sources is that these schools sometimes act like funnels.
Funnels for the mega carriers.
Yeah. Prioritizing maybe contractual agreements they have, filling seats, over really building up professionals who could be independent later.
Which just reinforces that pipeline of, well, cheaper labor.
And that leads to a pretty harsh reality check for rookies, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We saw testimony, drivers admitting they were just scared rigid their first week solo.
Because they'd never actually practiced real-world stuff. Like tight city turns into a loading dock during training?
Never. They found they learned more from, like you said earlier, YouTube or maybe talking to the old heads at truck stops.
Than from the thousands they spent on school.
Yeah. Which immediately tells you something, right?
That continuous learning, off-duty learning, is basically mandatory if you want to actually make money in this business.
The flawed foundation gets you in the truck, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But self-education is what builds your bank account.
Definitely. And that self-education is even more vital when you look at the economic and regulatory squeeze happening right now.
Yeah, economically it's tough. That oversupply of trucks, left over from the pandemic boom.
I mean, spot market rates are just, well, abysmal in many lanes.
Plus, you've got what drivers call broker games, right?
Yeah.
Skimming huge percentages off the top while the driver carries all the risk.
Which brings us to the policy side, the regulations,
Mm-hmm.
and the big controversy around the American Trucking Associations, the ATA.
Right. There are strong critiques there. The argument from critics is that the ATA overwhelmingly represents the financial interests of the big trucking companies.
Not the individual driver, the owner-operator, or the small fleet.
Not primarily, according to these critics. So when the ATA pushes for policies like, say, mandatory ELDs, electronic logging devices, or speed limiters,
They frame it entirely around safety. This is for safety.
That's the public messaging, yeah. But the driver perspective we saw in the sources, often completely different.
Drivers argue these tools are really about corporate control, creating a workforce that's predictable, manageable.
hmm They claim speed limiters, for instance, actually cause rolling traffic jams on the highway and force drivers into riskier situations trying to get around them.
And the ELD pressure makes them feel like they have to race the clock. It fundamentally changes how you have to drive.
But we have to be fair here. Bring in the alternative viewpoint.
Okay. What's the ATA's side of that argument?
Well, the ATA argues they're basically acting as a necessary translator in Washington, D.C.
Translator.
Yeah, kind of playing political chess within a, let's face it, often broken system, trying to prevent even more extreme laws from being passed by lawmakers who just don't understand trucking mechanics at all.
So they see themselves as maybe mitigating harm, working within the system.
That's the argument, playing the long game.
Okay. So whether you think the system is misguided, or maybe even complicit in squeezing drivers, the result feels the same, doesn't it?
Yeah, the takeaway seems to be that the individual driver's voice is just structurally missing from a lot of these big policy tables.
And the industry right now feels designed to squeeze labor, prioritize corporate profits over maybe professional respect and policy change. It's agonizingly slow.
It really is. And that policy vacuum, that slowness, is exactly why the sources we looked at kept stressing that pivot we mentioned earlier.
Right. You can't just wait for the ATA to save you.
Or wait for spot rates to magically recover to boon levels. You've got to adapt now.
It's about being one of those silent winners we read about. Treating your truck not just as a lifestyle, but as a serious business.
Exactly. Playing chess while maybe others are stuck playing checkers.
So what's the most important metric for those winners? What did the sources say?
Knowing their cost per mile, down to the penny.
To the penny. That seems critical.
Absolutely. If you don't know your exact operating cost, fuel, insurance, maintenance, reserves, everything, you're basically flying blind. You're already losing.
Because if your cost is, say, $1.60 a mile, and you take a load paying $1.50.
You're literally paying out of pocket to haul that freight. You have to know the math. No guessing.
So knowledge is power there. And then adaptability comes in.
Yeah, the smart drivers, the ones driving, are leveraging that knowledge. And they're building direct relationships with shippers, cutting out the middleman where they can.
And adapting their lanes, right? Moving into more specialized work.
Higher margin stuff, maybe LTL less than truckload, carrying smaller shipments for multiple customers in one go.
Or hotshot trucking, using smaller trucks for urgent, specialized freight.
Exactly. And critically, they're cutting costs smartly. Not skipping maintenance, but doing preventative maintenance to avoid bigger breakdowns later.
Okay, so that's managing the trucking side better. But here's where it got really interesting for me. The ultimate strategy for freedom.
Using that mandated off-duty time wisely, that 34-hour reset, the evenings.
Yeah. The core findings seem to be that real success, real independence, hinges on building multiple streams of income outside the truck.
So you can actually achieve retirement on your own schedule, your own terms, not just when the trucking market allows it.
And this is where that AI shield idea comes in, right?
Right. Training in modern digital tools is presented almost like a defense mechanism. Protection against the volatility of freight rates, or even a company going under.
And we're not talking about drivers learning to code complex AI, are we?
No, not at all. It's about leveraging existing AI tools for things like rapid content creation.
Like quick YouTube video scripts or writing marketing copy for something.
Yeah, or maybe automating email outreach for affiliate marketing links, stuff like that. Things designed to build and fund those non-W-2 income streams.
Basically optimizing their digital side hustle during downtime.
Exactly. And that diversification,
Yeah.
it seems absolutely essential, especially if you're an owner-operator.
Oh, yeah. The sources noted the brutal upfront costs now. $80,000, $120,000 maybe for a decent used truck.
Plus huge insurance costs, repair risks. The stress is immense.
So the smart ones, the survivors, are setting up those digital products or affiliate links or whatever side hustle works for them.
Because, as they say, the bills don't stop moving, even if your truck is parked for 3 days waiting on a part.
Right. The trucking job itself becomes almost the funding mechanism for building real independence.
It's not the lifelong sentence anymore. It's the engine for something else.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is. But, while this focus on individual action, individual independence is really key, It's also important to remember there are still advocates fighting for drivers in that slow policy world.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should definitely mention Jim Utley. He was honored recently with the Kathy Evans Highway to Victory Award.
And that award, it specifically recognizes that persistent, relentless, often behind-the-scenes advocacy work, working on transportation policy.
Being that crucial bridge, right, between the lawmakers in D.C. and the actual boots-on-the-ground drivers.
Exactly. And Utley's recognition is, I think, vital because he represents that rare kind of advocate who actually understands the day-to-day struggles drivers face.
And can communicate that effectively to policymakers who might not get it otherwise.
Right. It reminds drivers that, okay, yeah, policy change is slow, it takes incredible patience, but there are still people using quiet, fact-driven leadership to fight for their interests.
It kind of fosters a necessary sense of support, maybe, that someone is trying, even if it's not always visible.
A quiet leadership that maybe contrasts with the perceived PR-driven advocacy from some of the bigger players.
But even Utley's successful advocacy, while it's so crucial, it often takes years, decades even, to actually bear fruit in terms of policy change.
Which brings us right back, doesn't it?
It reinforces that core insight. The road to success right now in modern trucking. It's paved with knowledge, adaptability.
And that strategic use of your downtime. Because you just cannot afford to wait for external forces, whether it's the market or policymakers, to fix your personal finances.
Yeah. If we connect all these dots, look at the big picture. If the industry is moving, slowly maybe, but surely, towards more automation, more corporate control,
Then the only true freedom a driver can really control.
is the source of their personal income, right? Where the money comes from.
Exactly. Diversification equals control, in a way.
So, okay, that raises a final, maybe provocative question for you, the listener, to think about.
Given the actual monetary cost of just sitting idle during downtime,
What if you invested your next 34-hour reset, not just resting, but actually learning and maybe mastering a new AI-driven side hustle?
whether that's something like affiliate marketing or creating a digital product or something else entirely.
How quickly could that passive income built during your downtime start to match or even exceed what you earn driving for a day?
Think about that. That path to tree independence, it might be closer than you think.